Welcome to a demonstration of the Nutrient Workflow Management System with a specific focus on an HR onboarding process. We'll start today's demo with a quick review of a dashboard that's paired with this workflow. Dashboards are basically ways for users to launch requests that they want to launch and also track how those requests are moved through the system. So we have 4 HR-related buttons that lead to HR-related requests here in this upper left-hand corner. Then, to the right, you'll see we have key performance indicators, which you can think of as stopwatches that run in the software that measure how long it takes from a task to complete on specific workflows. In our first KPI, it measures how long it takes from HR to IT to complete their work. You can see in here that the current average is 19 minutes. And then here you can also see that we have another KPI that shows how long it takes from recruiting all the way to an HR approval. And you can see that the current average is 564 minutes, which is a bit high. So today we're going to go through a sample onboarding of a person using this workflow, and we're going to track that onboarding request through this report here, New Hire Requests, which was specifically designed for this purpose to be used on this dashboard. Here on the report, you'll see that we have a request link, a request ID, the name of the person who put in the request, which is considered the requester, the current status, the applicant name, the location that they'll be assigned, the title that they'll be given, the department that they'll be working in, and any software, hardware, or network access that is needed that their job will be paired with. And then we also have a link to download their resume, or you can preview it right from the report as well. This report is also filterable by status or by location. So if we want to see people who are hired in a particular location, we can apply that. And then we can also immediately return to the original report. So now I'll go ahead and kick off a new hire request. Here we have a form that we designed in the Nutrient Workflow Form Designer. I'm going to go ahead and fill out these fields. There are several different types. Some are required and some are not. The ones that are required are marked with an asterisk and will show us validation if we don't complete them before we try to submit the form. Here we'll attach a copy of a sample resume. So now here this certifications question actually shows some interactivity on the form. So if I indicate that certifications are needed for the job, a new section is shown on the form that wasn't visible before. And then if I change the answer to no, you'll see that that section disappears. Here at the HR approval question, I can choose who the downstream HR approver will be for this particular field. And that's also configurable beforehand. Then we have date fields where we can indicate when this person's start date might be, whether they're full-time or part-time, what department they're going to be assigned to, what benefits they'll be eligible for, and also what specific IT items might be needed. So now we filled out all the required fields on the form. Others are optional and don't necessarily need to be completed, so I'll go ahead and submit this form so we can proceed to the next task. Now we're at an approval task. This allows the user to choose an outcome for this particular request based on the choices that are provided by the process designer. So here we have the classic 3 options: approve, denied, or missing information. Choosing one of these options will send us a different path down the workflow. In terms of reviewing this request, this recruiting manager can click on this embedded link and review the form data that was submitted in the previous step. So here we can see that salary or hourly rate was incomplete, and it looks like we have the CTO in the clinical department, which might not necessarily be correct. So I'm going to send this back for missing information, and I am going to say, please change department and add salary. And I will submit that. This comment will then be conveyed via email back to the original submitter, and then the original task will land back in their queue, and then they can complete the information from here. So here we can change the department to IT from clinical, and then we can add a salary here. Now that I've updated the information, I can submit the form again. So now we're back at the recruiting manager approval, where they can then review the updated information that the requester put in. So they updated their department and added the salary. Now the recruiting manager will approve it and add a comment and submit it. Now we've moved on to the next step in the workflow. It's a very similar looking step. However, when we look at the flow view, which is basically a constantly updated read-only view of the workflow, you can see here what tasks have been initialized to be completed, tasks that have already been completed, or whatever task is open at the moment. We can also see the history of the completed tasks in terms of how many times they were completed, if they were completed once, twice, who completed them, the dates, and some other information as well. We can also see what future tasks lie ahead in this workflow in terms of things that are not yet completed or possibly paths that weren't followed, such as this rejected by the recruiting manager path. Returning to this HR approval, since this is basically the same task what we just completed before, we're not going to complete this in the same way. What we'll do is I will pull up the email notification that I just received. Here you can see this is the email notification that HR had received for an approval that's requested for a new hire. We can send as little or as much data as you want in these emails regarding the position, the title that's being hired. We can include a link to the resume here. And then another feature is that they can complete their approval right from their email. So this is a shortcut that you can add to an email notification configuration. So I can click on this one-time unique link that will allow them to complete this task directly from their email client. So I'm going to have HR approve this request, and you'll see this window has popped up here, and they can enter in any comments that they like, and they can click submit. They'll get a confirmation message that their approval choice was recorded and that they can close the window. So when we travel back to the dashboard, we will see in fact that our task has moved to the HR approved status, and all the other information has been updated as well, so we can track here on the report. If I click into the request and I can jump over to the flow view tab, I can see that it is now launching a separate background check process, where we're actually launching a separate workflow that a different department will complete for us to indicate whether or not this candidate passed a background check before we complete with onboarding this person. So before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the request detail page. This is basically our audit trail for the system. We can display on this page key performance indicators that have been completed so far. We can show at a high level of who put this request in, what kind of request this is, any open tasks you can see here under this open task section. And then we can also see the completed forms that we can view right from the request detail. We can also see in the task history a text-based explanation of the workflow. So you can see changes that were made in the initial application. So originally you can see that we submitted it for the clinical department, and our recruiting manager told us to change the department and add a salary. And that's what happened. We changed the department to IT, and we added our salary, sent it back to our recruiting manager who approved it, and then HR also approved it. And then you can see here that the system has launched our background check process. And we can travel to that background check process through this related request window, and I can click view request, and it'll bring me to our background check process. So here basically this is a simple binary workflow that's indicating whether or not we approve this person. So you can see here, very simple, just for this demo. We will run our background check and say that this person has been approved and submit it. And now with this workflow completed, we will use that same link to travel back to our main new hire request workflow. And now you can see that we've arrived at the IT portion. So since I filled out choices for each of the IT departments to provide something, we have activated all three of these paths in parallel. So now each of these teams can work separately to complete the task. And once they've completed all their tasks, we can move forward. So I'll start off with software delivery. I can add any details and choose what software is needed and let them know if I gave them access or not, sign off on it, and submit it. And I'll do the same thing for the other 2 tasks. So now jumping back to the flow view, you can see that every team has completed their necessary tasks. All IT tasks were completed, and we generated a PDF for this new hire. So if I go to the request detail, I can preview this document and see that the applicant information and all of their setup information can be found here.
Visit nutrient.io and try Nutrient Workflow for free for 14 days, or request a demo today.